Have you ever wondered what happens when the crown slips and reveals the all-too-human flaws of those who wear it? The polished marble halls of palaces have witnessed more scandals, cover-ups, and damage control than perhaps any political institution in history. I'm fascinated by how the most powerful families in history managed their darkest moments, and today, we're pulling back the royal curtain to examine how monarchs throughout history have weathered their most damaging scandals. What's particularly interesting is how the strategies for handling royal disgrace have evolved over centuries while somehow remaining fundamentally the same. From medieval kings to modern constitutional monarchs, the playbook for scandal management reveals surprising consistencies despite the radical changes in media and public expectations. The story of royal scandal management isn't just about gossip or tabloid fodder. It's a masterclass in power preservation, institutional survival, and the complex relationship between rulers and the ruled. By understanding how monarchies have navigated their worst crises, we gain insight into how power operates when it's threatened from within. Today, we'll explore the most effective and catastrophic scandal responses in royal history, examining which strategies preserved dynasties and which accelerated their downfall. Stay with me until the end, where we'll discover some surprisingly modern crisis management techniques that were pioneered centuries ago by resourceful royals fighting to save their thrones. Let's begin with what might be called the oldest and most straightforward approach to royal scandal management: the art of distraction. Historically, royal families have proven remarkably adept at redirecting public attention away from embarrassing or compromising situations. Consider King Henry II of England in the 12th century. When his involvement in the murder of Archbishop Thomas Becket threatened to destroy his reputation, Henry staged an elaborate public penance, walking barefoot through Canterbury while being flogged by monks. This theatrical display wasn't nearly about religious atonement. It was a calculated public relations strategy. By transforming himself from villain to penitent, Henry reclaimed control of the narrative and effectively changed the subject. This strategy of distraction evolved in sophistication over time. When George IV of England faced public ridicule over his extravagant lifestyle and disastrous marriage to Caroline of Brunswick in the early 19th century, his advisors orchestrated elaborate public ceremonies and architectural projects to showcase royal splendor. The construction of the Royal Pavilion at Brighton served not just as a pleasure palace, but as a distraction from the king's scandals, a glittering spectacle that gave the public something to admire rather than criticize. In modern times, we've seen similar approaches. When British royals face personal scandals, there's often a conveniently timed announcement of a pregnancy, engagement, or charitable initiative that shifts media focus. The timing rarely seems coincidental. What's remarkable is how effective this strategy remains despite our awareness of it. I'd like to take a moment to mention that if you're enjoying this exploration of royal damage control, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. We regularly delve into these kinds of rarely discussed historical patterns and power dynamics, examining how the strategies of the past continue to shape our present. Your subscription helps support more content that goes beyond surface-level history to examine the fascinating mechanics of power, prestige, and public perception. The second major strategy in the royal scandal playbook is perhaps the most brutal: elimination of the problem. Throughout history, inconvenient people have sometimes simply disappeared from the royal narrative, whether through exile, imprisonment, or more permanent solutions. The Tudor court of England provides numerous examples. And Boleyn's fall from grace didn't end with divorce, it ended at the executioner's block. When scandal threatened the stability of the monarchy, Henry VIII didn't hesitate to eliminate the source. This wasn't unusual for the era. Across Europe, royal courts dealt with embarrassing relatives or scandalous figures by removing them entirely from public view. Russian history reveals particularly stark examples. When Tsar Peter the Great's son Alexei became a political liability and source of scandal due to his opposition to his father's reforms, Peter had him imprisoned and tortured to death. The official explanation was that Alexei died of natural causes, an early example of not just elimination, but carefully managed messaging around that elimination. In more recent centuries, physical elimination gave way to social and geographical exile. King Edward VIII's abdication crisis in 1936 resulted in his effective banishment from Britain. After marrying the American divorcee Wallis Simpson, Edward and his bride were dispatched to France, given ceremonial but meaningless titles, and kept at arm's length from royal functions. The scandal wasn't erased, but its ongoing impact was contained by removing the principal figures from the scene. The Spanish royal family employed a similar strategy with Infanta Cristina, who was stripped of her ducal title and removed from royal duties when her husband became embroiled in a corruption scandal. While not physically eliminated, she was symbolically excised from the institution, a modern version of an ancient practice. The third pillar of royal scandal management is perhaps the most interesting: strategic disclosure and controlled narrative. Rather than hiding every unflattering detail, savvy monarchs throughout history have recognized the value of selective transparency. Marie Antoinette, despite her reputation for extravagance, attempted to manage public perception by strategically releasing information about her charitable works while downplaying her spending. When scandal erupted over the infamous diamond necklace affair, where fraudsters used her name to purchase an extraordinarily expensive piece of jewelry, the French court initially attempted a cover-up before pivoting to a strategy of presenting the Queen as an innocent victim of conspiracy. This partial disclosure was designed to generate sympathy rather than outrage. The monarchy of Sweden provides an interesting modern case study. King Carl XVI Gustav faced rumors of infidelity and inappropriate behavior in the 2000s. Rather than denying everything, the royal household acknowledged mistakes in vague terms while emphasizing the king's commitment to his family and duties. This controlled disclosure effectively defused the situation by removing the explosive potential of complete revelation while avoiding detailed admissions. Perhaps the most sophisticated practitioners of controlled narrative in royal scandal management have been the British royals following the death of Princess Diana. Facing unprecedented public backlash over their perceived cold response, the House of Windsor gradually shifted to a strategy of limited vulnerability. Queen Elizabeth II's rare public address acknowledging the nation's grief represented a calculated decision to show just enough emotion to satisfy public demand without compromising the monarchy's traditional reserve. This strategy reached its peak with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's exit from royal duties. When complete control of the narrative became impossible, the palace pivoted to shaping it through carefully worded statements expressing sadness that reinforcing institutional boundaries. What's particularly fascinating about royal scandal management is how it reveals the tension between institutional preservation and individual reputation. In almost every case, the monarchy sacrifices individuals to protect the crown as an institution. From Catherine Howard to Princess Margaret, royal family members who become liabilities find themselves subordinated to the greater goal of dynastic survival. This pattern explains why personal popularity provides little protection when scandals erupt. No matter how beloved a royal figure might be, their value to the institution is ultimately measured in terms of stability rather than popularity. Princess Diana discovered this harsh reality, as did Edward VIII before her. The crown outlasts any individual who wears it, a principle that has guided royal crisis management for centuries. Before we close, I want to highlight one of the most interesting aspects of royal scandal management: its influence on modern public relations. Many techniques we associate with contemporary crisis management, controlled leaks, strategic timing of announcements, calibrated displays of remorse, have roots in royal practice. When corporate leaders or politicians deploy these strategies today, they're drawing from a playbook refined over centuries in palace corridors. To summarize our journey through the hidden mechanisms of royal damage control, monarchies have survived centuries of potentially devastating scandals through strategic distraction, targeted elimination of problems, and carefully controlled narratives. The most successful royal houses have recognized when to hide, when to reveal, and perhaps most importantly, when to sacrifice individual members for institutional survival. I'm curious about your thoughts on this exploration of royal crisis management. Have you noticed similar patterns in how contemporary public figures handle scandals? Do you see echoes of these royal strategies in modern political or celebrity damage control? Share your observations in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspectives on how these ancient techniques manifest in today's world. If you found value in this deeper look at the mechanics of power and public perception, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more content that examines the often hidden patterns connecting past and present. And don't forget to check the description for ways you can support the channel as we continue exploring these fascinating historical dynamics that still shape our world today. Until next time, remember that behind every polished royal image lies a carefully managed reality, one that reveals as much about power as it does of our human nature.